sun shines. Here is part 3 of 4 of my Dark Crystal series. In this video, you'll see how I created and painted the Aughra prosthetic for the final look. If you care more about the paint, you can skip to about 9 minutes and 40 seconds in. If you want to be kept up to date on all of my artistic endeavors, then don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. The process I'm showing you is how I managed to create a prosthetic or mask using only what I had on hand, which was paper towel and latex. This is not the best method, but it did the job. Preferably, I would have sculpted this on my face cast using an oil-based clay that would then be molded. I feel the piece could work really well either as an encapsulated silicone piece or a foam latex piece. However, I didn't have the means or enough ventilation to possibly be able to do this in my apartment. The next viable option would have been to sculpt this in clay and then stipple latex over it. The issue with this method, though, is that you can't really get any detail. And the other huge downfall of not creating a mold is that if anything happens to your prosthetic, you're going to have to restart entirely because you're not going to have the option to just recast your piece. I settled on sculpting it bit by bit with latex and paper towel. You have to work fast to get in your details, and you can also mix flour into your latex, foregoing the paper towel and creating more of a paste, and sculpt directly with that instead. Unfortunately, I had no flour on hand, and personally, when I've tried using this method, no matter what I do or how well I try to mix, I can never get the clumps out in time, and then I generally end up over mixing and wasting a lot of latex. So personally, for me, that is not my favorite method, but it is definitely a very viable one. To create Aughra's face, I rip up different sizes of paper towel, and then I go back and forth with latex using my fingers and a metal spatula of sorts to achieve some of the details. When I use my fingers to smooth with the latex, I make sure I dip my fingers in a little bit of latex. Same with the spatula so that nothing sticks and you don't accidentally tear something and have to start right over. The entire time I am working, I am referencing images of this most beautifully ugly creature. Enjoy watching the rest of the speed sculpt. I'll be back in a few minutes describing what I did for the painting process. When I was satisfied that I was done the sculpt, I used a sponge just to do one final thin layer of latex over the whole thing. Once that dried, I then did a thin layer of Prosthetic. Make sure that you are not going all the way to that blending edge with the Prosthetic. Just stick to the main parts of the face. You want to make sure you have something blendable, and the Prosthetic might impede that. What the Prosthetic is going to do is just give a layer over top of the latex so that you can use any product you want for coloring, and not have to just stick to rubber grease, because sometimes creams can cause latex to deteriorate. So the Prosthetic will protect against that. Once everything is fully dry, apply a generous amount of powder, either setting powder or baby powder, so that absolutely nothing sticks together. And then you're going to go in with a smaller brush and generous amounts of powder again to slowly kind of start peeling your prosthetic away from your face cast. To paint her, I cover her in a darker brown cream base using mostly a sponge. What I've done is I've actually torn little chunks out of the sponge to give it a more irregular surface, and it'll help get into more areas that way. Also, for the creases, like the crevices that you can't reach with the sponge, I did go ahead and use a brush for those areas. I then splatter a lot of translucent layers of paint with a chip brush. For this, I'm using the Necromania and 12 Years a Slave palette from Skin Illustrator. These are alcohol activated palettes. You need isopropyl alcohol at 99% to activate these, and the more alcohol you add, the more translucent your layer will be. For a more realistic effect, it is definitely better to have it as translucent as possible. I also use some black eyeshadow for some of the deeper shading. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so very much for watching. The final part of the series will be up next week.